After giving you my take on Jing's Hatsu, I think it's only fair I cover Beyond's next. This theory will be an attempt to deconstruct and unite all the disparate details, unknown elements, and in-world character assumptions that surround Beyond's ability and its assumed purpose. Just like with Jing's video, it'll take a bit of setup to get to the point, so I do have to ask for your patience ahead of time. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, let's start with Longi, one of Beyond's many bastard children. In Chapter 401, Longi proposed a deal to Kurapika, Bill, and Queen Oito. In return for a formal and then-enforceable truce with 5th Prince Tubeppa, as well as the boon of using her contract-facilitating ability one time, the group were to aid her in identifying Beyond Netero's secret child among the 14 princes. As both a part of her ability's condition, as well as an attempt to reconcile with Kurapika's camp since she lied and participated in the Nen training sessions despite already being a Nen user, Longi revealed the full scope of her backstory and ultimate goal. See, Longi isn't your run-of-the-mill Nen user. She, and the rest of her half-siblings, have been awakened to Nen since birth by their father's Nen attack, which imbued each of them with an incredibly dark Nen that is to activate upon death. Longi goes on to state that it was her half-sister Mahaka who was pivotal in uncovering this hidden truth. See, despite having successfully graduated from Kakin's military academy's harshest term, Mahaka was passed over for becoming Second Prince Camilla's royal guard, since the prince elevated her have-nots to the position instead. When Mahaka's parents did not mirror her own disappointment at that, despite having groomed her from an early age to believe in Beyond's grand ideal of uniting the world under Kakin, which seemingly implicitly necessitated for her to climb the country's military ranks, Mahaka realized that something was wrong. During her investigation, she came across Longi, who had previously independently realized the fact that the father who raised her was not her biological one, and the two began to look into the whole matter together. However, it was only after the Seed Urn ceremony imbuing the princess with guardian spirit beasts and marking the beginning of the blood ritual that is Kakin succession battle did their seals manifest in full force. The two consulted a renowned Nen user and found out that they were cursed with an incredibly powerful seal, denoting them as cursed sacrifices. Thereafter, they found out that there are around a dozen curse sacrifices which are designated as powerful or appetizing depending on the translation, and at least as many weak or unappetizing ones. Longi goes on to explain that she isn't aware of the exact nature of the curse or who its target is, but is certain that it must be a prince due to the fact that there are 14 princes and about a dozen appetizing curse sacrifices. She then goes on to explain her desire to find this hidden child of Beyond's and kill them with her own hands as a kind of final fuck you to the father that cursed her very existence. As I've mentioned a bunch of times by now in previous videos, Longi's explanation and reasoning contain a bunch of assumptions and leaps in logic to the point that I genuinely cannot trust her conclusion. She assumes Beyond has a child among the princes based on nothing. No, I'm serious. In 2 of the 3 translations I've looked at, her reasoning is the following. Well, Beyond wouldn't go to such lengths to support someone as likely to win as First Prince Benjamin, which means he obviously has a child among the princes whom he wants to ascend to the throne. Obviously. On the one hand, sure, yeah, perhaps going to such lengths would be a bit overboard considering all the advantages Benjamin already has when compared to his siblings. But on the other hand, can you really ever be too careful? The world of Nen is unpredictable, and considering he had nothing but time and resources, I don't see why it couldn't be argued Beyond just wanted to make extra sure Benji would win. Furthermore, if he was really aiming to preserve a single prince, why wouldn't he create measures to keep that single prince alive instead of preparing this convoluted plan to kill all the other ones? It's entirely inefficient. In any case, even if you subscribe to the idea that the curse sacrifices are meant to kill the princes, it does not follow from that at all that Beyond has a child among them. Maybe he just identifies more with another prince or thinks he can more easily control someone like 3rd Prince Zheng Lei or 11th Prince Fugetsu, for example. Another translation has Longi saying that she cannot conceive of the notion that someone like Beyond would go to such lengths for someone unrelated to him, reasoning that the prince Beyond wants to take the throne must be his own flesh and blood. While this reasoning is actually sound, it's entirely based on the unfounded premise that Beyond is a type of person who'd only put the effort in supporting his own progeny. Keep in mind, Longi does not know Beyond and hasn't ever personally met him, as far as we know. This is nothing more than her extremely biased perception and conjecture at work. Alright, since this is the point of divergence, I'd like to first explore this idea of the cursed sacrifices being meant to curse the princes to its logical conclusion before moving on to my own theory, in the hopes that this will make clear the problems that arise from such a setup, which my take on things will aim to resolve. The notion that the sacrifices are meant to kill the princes is seemingly justified by three things. First is the fact that the seals fully manifested only after the completion of the seed urn ceremony, implying a direct link between the cursed sacrifices and the princes. Second is that, upon first glance, the number of a dozen powerful cursed sacrifices would make sense if each one was meant to curse and kill one of the 14 princes. And third is 8th Queen's Oito's explanation that the criteria for a prince participating in the succession war is them being a legitimate child of a king's wife, meaning that the paternal lineage doesn't matter for a prince's legitimacy. This in particular gives credence to Longi's theory, as it suddenly makes it far more likely that Beyond has sired a prince from both a narrative and in-world perspective, despite her leaps in logic. Now, if this is indeed the case, if there is a prince who Beyond wants to win the succession war and has set up cursed sacrifices to kill the other princes once certain, thus far unspecified, conditions have been met, the prince favored by Beyond has to be among the younger ones, specifically princes 10 to 14, namely 10th Prince Kacho, 11th Prince Fugetsu, 12th Prince Momose, 13th Prince Mariam, and 14th Prince Wobble. I say this because of the established nature of curses. Curses are personal. Curses in Hunter x Hunter work by someone focusing malicious nen at a specific individual, which is usually manifested through someone channeling their ill will towards someone, since nen is equal parts life force and willpower. Curses are personal nen attacks that take a long time to build up and whose potency is to a large degree based on proximity. In order for something as powerful as a death curse to be effective, particularly against a prince protected by a guardian spirit beast, which have been implied to offer the princes some innate protection against such attacks, even if empowered by post-mortem nen, the curser would need to die as close to the target of their cursing as possible in order for it to be effective. As much as a few meters can make a difference with regards to how effective a curse is. With curses, proximity is key. Furthermore, a progeny of Beyonds turning into a powerful or appetizing cursed sacrifice would, for reasons I'll expand on in a bit, almost certainly necessitate them reaching a certain age. As in, I doubt a 10-year-old would be able to accumulate enough power to turn into a powerful cursed sacrifice. Additionally, there'd be no point to it, since a literal child wouldn't be able to get close to any of the princes anyway. As such, powerful curses, particularly those meant to kill a GSB-protected prince quickly and without much, if any, room for defense, recovery, or a successful exorcism, would have to specifically target them over a long period of time, and the curser would preferably need to die as close to them as possible once the specific conditions are met. For example, Longi's seal could trigger upon the condition of her being within a certain proximity of Prince Benjamin, while his guardian spirit beast was not manifested, or something along those lines. All this entails the following. Since a sacrifice is designated as such and cursed at birth, the dozen powerful cursed sacrifices Longi mentioned would need to be around 18 years old minimum in order to qualify and be of practical use to Beyond in the succession war. This means that any currently active powerful cursed sacrifices wouldn't be able to target any of the younger princes. I'd tentatively say that 9th Prince Halkenberg would be the youngest prince for which a sacrifice could be designated, since we know that at 15 he skipped grades in order to attend an extremely prestigious university, meaning that he's between 19 and 20 years old at this point in the story. This leaves the aforementioned 5 youngest princes as Beyond's potential progeny, and since 10th Prince Kacho and 12th Prince Momose are already dead, it in actuality only leaves 11th Prince Fugetsu, 13th Prince Mariam, and 14th Prince Wobble. I know her and Kacho are supposed to be twins, but considering all the shenanigans shenanigans with children getting swapped around, I'm considering Fugetsu as a contender as well. As of chapter 410, Fugetsu is currently seemingly enjoying the protection of Kaiser, the deputy chief prosecutor of Kakin's Justice Bureau. 13th Prince Mariam has been granted additional guards by his mother that were initially part of Momose's entourage, an act which indirectly led to the girl's death. Furthermore, following his elder sister's death, Little Prince Mariam's GSB also developed the perfect ability for keeping him safe in the long term from any external threats in the form of a barrier that teleports away anyone who tries to enter his room into a perfect conjured copy of it instead. Finally, 14th Prince Wobble's guards that were assigned by the other queens, i.e. spies and assassins in waiting, were all dispatched by an outside influence in the form of Silent Majority's user. While there are numerous reasons for how these youngest of the remaining princes have found themselves in more favorable situations than their low standings should have allowed for at this point in the war, Beyond's all-pervasive influence and ironclad setup could absolutely account for at least one of them. If Beyond does indeed plan on using the curse sacrifices to eliminate the princes, his progeny has to be among the three youngest I mentioned. However, as you can imagine, there are problems with this. The curse sacrifices being meant to eliminate the princess, A, does not explain the reaction of Mahaka's parents at her not becoming a prince's personal guard, and B, seems like a huge waste since it hasn't come into play yet, despite 3 princes having already died. Let's focus on Mahaka's parents first. While Beyond not making any moves to reinstate her following the elevation of the have-nots to the station of Camilla's personal guards, makes sense, since perhaps Beyond's under the restriction that he cannot directly influence the curse sacrifices after setting things in place. Mahaka's parents, who were supposedly die-hard Beyond fanatics, as well as high-level military officials, should have absolutely pushed for Mahaka to be reinstated or transferred to another prince's entourage. At the very least, they should have felt devastated at their daughter failing to take her place in bringing about Beyond's grand vision. One of the translations I looked at even used the term blasé to describe their reaction to the news. While it may be a small thing, the fact that that puzzle piece doesn't fit has bothered me for a long time now. The seals being a waste seems obvious. Beyond supposedly went through all the effort of winning over high-level military officials, having them engage in sham marriages to raise Beyond's own children, only for him to curse said children and designate them with a purpose most of them would never fulfill. It genuinely seems like an incredibly inefficient way of rigging the winner of the succession battle free-for-all. Also a slight tangent, but it has to be asked, what in the world happens with the curse sacrifices whose princes have died? Like, what happened to the curse of the sacrifice that was cursing 8th Prince Sale Sale? Will his or her curse just go away? Will it turn on the host? Will it just remain there forever, doing nothing, or sucking their aura or whatever? If I were Kurapika or Longi, I'd attempt to find other curse sacrifices on board and attempt to see whether any of them have had anything strange happen to them following Sale Sale's death. Back on topic. As you can see, while the curse sacrifices cursing the princess is an okay hypothesis, it's far from perfect. However, the nail in the coffin for me regarding this setup is the following. Having had half a century to lay the groundwork for his grand plan, why in the world would Beyond stop at having a single child among the princes? Having full knowledge of the fact that the paternal lineage of a prince doesn't matter, why wouldn't Beyond maximize his chances by having 2, 3, 4, or 5 princes be his? I mean, seriously, if Onior and Broccoli were both able to slip in there and each apparently get 1, why in the world would someone with 10 times the influence and power they have stop at a single prince? The way I see it, in preparation for this, Beyond could have easily swayed the previous succession war in favor of the current King Nasubi, which may have come at the cost of the king allowing Beyond to sire a multitude of the princes. As such, it is, to me, very likely that either none or multiple princes are Beyond's children. He either doesn't care about his own flesh and blood ascending to the throne, or he cares enough to all but guarantee that it does indeed happen. Or who knows, maybe he doesn't really care about who becomes king at all, though that does seem a bit unlikely. Regardless of whether we take the route of none or multiple of the princes indeed being Beyond's children, the chances that a dozen powerful curse sacrifices are meant to target and kill the rest of the princes becomes far less likely. As in, if none of the princes are his, Beyond either doesn't care about who wins the succession battle or favors a single prince that isn't connected to him by blood. If so, that prince has to be among the three youngest, owing to the established nature of curses. While absolutely possible, that wouldn't account for the blasé reaction of Mahaka's parents, the inefficiency of the cursed sacrifices, or why in the world would Beyond choose to sire only a single prince so late in the game, despite prepping for this for multiple decades. On the other hand, if he does have multiple children among the princes, a dozen powerful curse sacrifices, each targeting a specific prince, simply wouldn't make much sense numbers-wise, unless more than one curse sacrifice can target the same prince. While possible, second Prince Camilla's have-nots set the precedent that this is unlikely, as it may dilute the power of a curse. As in, if multiple people can curse a single person at once and still have each curse be entirely effective, why wouldn't Camilla assign multiple of her have-nots to curse high-ranking princes, but particularly First Prince Benjamin, instead of wasting time and resources cursing children and a literal baby? The fact that only a single have-not is assigned to each prince implies that that is the most efficient and potent way to curse someone. So, if not to curse and kill a specific prince, what would the purpose of the powerful or appetizing cursed sacrifices be? To be devoured, either by Beyond himself or the monstrosities native to the Dark Continent, such as the Five Calamities. See, I believe that in order for a child of Beyond to become an appetizing curse sacrifice, they must fulfill multiple conditions throughout their life, one of which is likely to successfully graduate from Kakin's military academy, akin to how Benjamin Baton allows him to inherit the abilities of his subordinates after they've died on the condition that they graduated from the military academy and were a part of his personal guard at the time of their deaths. Since I'm assuming someone can usually only graduate from the academy at 18 years at the earliest, that's what I meant when I said that a powerful curse sacrifice must first reach a certain age in order to be designated as such. So, powerful or appetizing curse sacrifices are Beyond's children who have successfully graduated from the academy, possibly at the top of their class, while the weak or unappetizing ones are those that have not fulfilled these conditions at the time of the seed urn ritual. Speaking of, the ritual would in this case be nothing more than a predetermined cutoff point when the seals would manifest and the sacrifice is designated as either appetizing or not, with unappetizing ones either being complete failures or far less powerful versions of the appetizing sacrifices. From here, there would be yet another distinction. The nature and purpose of those curse sacrifices that were on the ritual grounds designating the succession ritual, i.e. the Black Whale number 1, at the time of its completion, such as Longi and Salkov if they survive until the end, versus the nature and purpose of those that have remained in the known world, such as Mahaka. The succession battle is already meant to serve as a proving ground for the official children of the king, so it makes thematic and ritualistic sense that Beyond may be leeching off of it for the purpose of increasing the power of the seals of those curse sacrifices that manage to survive it. Having the seals be initiated by the seed urn ceremony, which marked the official start to the succession battle blood ritual, and then have it finalized by its completion, would make for a perfect circle and be entirely thematically congruous. Those are the sacrifices that reach the fake Dark Continent with Beyond. To quickly remind you, the Kakin royal family and general populace are actually headed to a fake DC, while Beyond and the Hunter Association are supposed to venture into the Dark Continent proper. Would be used by him to aid in Beyond's escape from the Zodiacs one way or another. Bill said that escaping from the elites of the Hunter Association would be entirely left up to Beyond, and him using his now empowered, accursed children to aid him in that endeavor would make sense, particularly if he had prepared for the circumstance of someone of Jing's caliber guarding him as well. The way I see it, there are three possibilities with regards to the cursed sacrifices that find themselves aboard the Black Whale and survive the succession battle ritual. A. They are meant to be decade-spanning storages of aura, which Beyond can siphon off upon activating their seals through physical contact. This would kill his child in the process, and the humongous boost of aura he'd get from them may be further empowered via post-mortem Nen. B. They serve as the condition for activating an insane insanely powerful ability, which as a condition would require the sacrifice of a powerful curse sacrifice that has survived the succession ritual. This would of course limit the ability to about half a dozen total uses. Or C, to really emphasize the fact that they are termed appetizing curse sacrifices, as well as the fact that Longi's seal is on the bottom side of her tongue, which evokes the idea of food and consumption. What if the malevolent nature of their curses and the massive amount of aura they have undoubtedly accumulated in the decades they've been active are meant to attract the monstrosities of the Dark Continent, the most dangerous of which may be naturally attuned to and capable of using Nen. The apex predators native to the Dark Continent live in an environment where the selective pressures of evolution are such that only those of them that have become awakened to aura on some level and transcended their baseline barriers and limitations could possibly thrive. Props to BladeofGrass and YouTube for introducing me to this notion. Do be sure to check out his channel, I've linked the video I'm referencing in the description below. As such, many of these creatures might have a sixth sense for sensing aura, much as humans awakened to Nen do. If so, the purpose of the appetizing sacrifices might be to entice those particularly dangerous and vicious creatures among them into consuming the sacrifices only to be cursed and slain as a result. Think of a cursed sacrifice as a cheese laden with poison meant to kill rats the size of skyscrapers. This, while those appetizing cursed sacrifices left in the known world and thus outside the ritual grounds, such as Mahaka, would instead wait to be devoured by Beyond himself. See, while proximity is indeed incredibly important with curses, that doesn't apply if the cursor and accursed are connected via the cursor's own aura. For example, the primary reason why the Phantom Troop did not seek revenge against Kurapika after Uvo and Paku died and Chrollo's Nen was sealed away was because Pika's judgment chain was embedded inside Chrollo's heart, and the troop were concerned that by killing Kurapika, his post-mortem Nen would resonate to kill Chrollo on the spot, since he was in a state of Zetsu and thus utterly defenseless. Since they feared this would have happened regardless of distance, it's safe to assume that one's Nen, even if detached and on the other side of the world, is able to resonate with one's will if it has already found a foothold in someone or something else. As such, so as to not waste good food, Beyond could have made it so that if he were to be fatally wounded, his post-mortem Nen would resonate with the seal of one of the appetizing curse sacrifices left in the known world to kill them and transfer their own life essence to himself, thereby reviving him in a second Prince Camilla-esque fashion. Actually, in the video I made going into which of the princes could be Beyond's secret child, I half joked that I couldn't see anyone else but Beyond having the knowledge and balls to instruct Camilla to develop such an insane ability as Cat's name, but that's neither here nor there. Ever since I came up with the notion that Beyond could, in a way, be devouring his own progeny, I couldn't get the Saturn devouring his son motif out of my mind. Saturn is the Roman name for the Greek titan Kronos, the primordial personification of time, and I want you to think just how much the theme of time and waiting or patience are closely tied to Beyond's character. He's been waiting and preparing for this excursion for half a century, references his patience and willingness to wait on a few occasions, and looks remarkably good for someone in his early 70s minimum. To give you a bit of perspective, Zeno hasn't yet hit 70. Now, while his youthful appearance could be down to genetics, Netero was at least 110 years old at the time of his death and reached the peak of his power in his early 50s, it's also very much possible that Beyond artificially prolonged the natural longevity of his peak by cursing his progeny and absorbing their life essence into himself. The name of this ability may be something like a race against time, Saturn devouring his children. This ability may be an offshoot of the one that made the curse sacrifices, which in itself may be an offshoot of yet another ability, since it's quite common for Nen users to use the same groundwork, which in this case would be the creation of seals to curse people with, to make multiple abilities sharing the same core. Thinkill was electricity, Moral smoke, Zeno's dragon head, or Pito's puppets, and the various abilities that have come about relying on the same baseline mechanic. This admittedly convoluted and layered setup would account for A, the reaction of Mahaka Mahaka's parents. In this scenario, Beyond would have assured them that all they needed to do was to see to it that their daughter enrolled in and graduated from the academy, promising that if she did, she'd have a role to play in his plans regardless of anything else. B, the issue of proximity and the cursed sacrifices left in the known world would be solved, as their purpose would be to be consumed by Beyond. Keep in mind, it's very possible that Mahaka may not be the only appetizing cursed sacrifice that was barred from joining the expedition. And C, there'd be no issue with inefficiency and impracticality like there would be if each sacrifice was meant to kill a particular prince. Furthermore, this setup would not contradict anything established. The seals would still constitute a curse that would require the death of a sacrifice and would still justify its malefic aura. The number of a dozen powerful curse sacrifices and its closeness to the number of princes would be nothing more than a coincidence, as that would simply be the number of powerful curse sacrifices that had borne fruit and successfully fulfilled the conditions to become powerful or appetizing. Also, instead of being directly tied to it, the seals would be contingent on the succession war ritual simply as a condition to further empower them. To summarize for a final time, those sacrifices that were aboard the whale and survived the completion of the succession war would serve as either a power source for Beyond or as appetizing but poisoned lures for killing powerful monstrosities, while those few left behind would be tucked away safely in the known world to serve as Beyond's extra lives in case the unforeseen were to occur. After all, someone venturing into the Dark Continent is assuredly to expect the unexpected. Two things I'd like to add at the end here, since I forgot to integrate them in the script proper, but would be remiss if I didn't address them. First, I know that some will argue that it'd be unsatisfying from a narrative standpoint if none of the princes were indeed Beyond's children, since it would make Kurapika's contract with Longi moot. Not at all. While she is 110% sure that there is a child of Beyond's among the princes, the conditions of her contract state that in the unlikely circumstance that she is indeed wrong, Kurapika and co. would still be given a single use of her contract facilitating ability, so they don't end up having wasted their time. I have a very cool idea with regards to how the contract could be used, but that's a topic for another video. And second, while the sacrifices being intended to kill the princes doesn't make sense to me as of chapter 410, them being used to preserve a prince could work. I mentioned that in the middle of the video but forgot to expand on it. As in, Beyond could have made it so that the seal of the powerful curse sacrifices is meant to trigger upon, for example, Mariam's death to kill a sacrifice and transfer their life essence to him, thus reviving the little prince. In this case, all the sacrifices would be targeted towards protecting the same person, essentially giving him or her a dozen extra lives. It's not perfect, since it would be a bit awkward for Beyond to curse someone like Longi to die for a person who will be born decades after her. However, the fact that she and the other sacrifices would share blood ties to the prince through Beyond could work as a catalyst for bridging that issue. It also wouldn't explain the reaction of Mahaka's parents, since in this case proximity should be an issue and Mahaka would be of no use to Beyond. Finally, it wouldn't really fit as well with the term appetizing curse sacrifice and the focus on eating the position of the seal entails. But perhaps gluttony is just Beyond's general theme. Then those are my takes on Beyond's potential ability. I know this video may have been a bit tough to follow, but that's only because it was also tough to write. I expanded on and got ideas as I was writing it, and due to some personal stuff and the needing to prep for the return of the manga, I couldn't get to rewriting all of it to make my ideas a bit more streamlined. Hence why I may have repeated myself a bit more than usual to make my points clearer. Apologies. Hope you found the video enjoyable despite that. Before signing off, I'd very much like to thank the thinkers and overthinkers for going the extra mile in supporting the channel. Also, a special shout out to Nasan for sticking with the channel for a whole damn year. As usual, thank you very much for watching, your feedback is always appreciated, subscribe if you like more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be a chapter review.